What's up, everyone? Bass here. So with the NFL trade deadline exactly 2 weeks away and all the issues at wide receiver with the Green Bay Packers, today I'm going to go over some potential trade candidates at wide receiver for the Packers. The Packers are super thin at wide receiver right now. Randall Cobb went out with an ankle injury against the Jets. Now, he did post on his Instagram basically saying he'll be okay and he'll be back soon, but he'll likely still be out a few weeks. Christian Watson re-injured his hamstring. That's been bothering him pretty much all year. He could likely land on IR, but likely won't be back for another few weeks. Sammy Watkins is already on IR, and although he can return soon, the Packers in general just have a ton of injuries at the wide receiver room, and this is a wide receiver room that has really underperformed, to say the least, in 2022. So it's to no one's surprise that a bunch of trade rumors and people saying they should trade for certain wide receivers are coming up on social media. Now, I know this happens pretty much every single year as a Packers fan. Should they trade for this receiver? Should they sign this receiver? And most of the time, I'm not on board because, most of the time we have Devontae Adams, you have, a Jordy Nelson, someone like that, where you go, you don't really need that. You already have a 1,000-yard wide receiver. But this is the first time where I'm really going, okay, I think the Packers should go out and potentially trade for a wide receiver. So like I said, today, let's go over my list of potential trade candidates. Now, all the receivers on this list, I made the assumption that they would be available for trade due to the certain circumstances on their teams. Also, these receivers are in no particular order, but let's get it started. At the first wide receiver as a potential trade candidate, I have Patriots wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. So firstly, New England would be saving money trading Kendrick Bourne, roughly $3.5 million. And Bourne's been 6th in targets for New England so far in the 2022 season, 7th in passing snaps. He's really been written out of that entire offense, which is crazy to me because he had 877 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2021. Kendrick Bourne plays majority of his snaps out wide, roughly right around 65%. And I think he would command a late round pick, likely a 6th round pick. So for me, I think he's definitely a trade candidate, and I think the Patriots would definitely move him for a late round pick. Next on my list is one that has been getting a lot of traction today in particular, and that is Chase Claypool from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Today, Jeremy Fowler from ESPN reported that Claypool is a trade candidate and even listed Green Bay as a potential suitor. He mentioned that Claypool was available in the preseason, although the asking price at that time was high, and that's probably why he wasn't dealt. Claypool is tied for 2nd in targets for Pittsburgh with George Pickens, who is also on the rise. Not to mention their other rookie wide receiver, Calvin Austin, will be returning from injury this week. He's 2nd in passing snaps, and he has 225 yards total. He still has another year left on his rookie deal, so a cheap wide receiver for this year, under I think $4 million for this year and next year combined. So as Fowler reported, the asking price in preseason was high. I would assume that would go down a little bit since no one would offer whatever they were asking in the preseason. My best guess is if you were to try to trade for Chase Claypool right now, it would be right around a 3rd round draft pick. And if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I'm already on the phone sending that draft pick over for Chase Claypool. The Packers don't have a great history drafting in the 3rd round, to say the least. And I think Chase Claypool is one of my favorite guys on this current list and would contribute to the Packers offense as a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver right off the bat. Next on my list is Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is clearly the number 3 wide receiver right now in Cincinnati, but he has the talent to be a solid number 1 or number 2 in Green Bay, just like Chase Claypool. He's a whopping 5th in targets on the Bengals behind guys like Hayden Hurst and Joe Mixon. And more importantly, he's a cap casualty for Cincinnati. And if you're a cap casualty and a 3rd string wide receiver, you're likely either going to be cut or traded. So this is why I have him on this list, and I do think he is a trade candidate here. He's a $10 mil cap hit right now for that 3rd wide receiver spot and is owed another $10 million next year on his contract. The Bengals would save $7.3 million off their cap by trading him right now. And considering he's already 28 years old, the Bengals might be wanting to get some type of return before they potentially cut him next year to save that $7.3 million. And Tyler Boyd, in my opinion, is probably the best 3rd wide receiver in the NFL. This dude has a ton of talent. He has an 800-plus yard season 4 years in a row and has only missed 3 games in that entire span. So this dude is durable, he's always on the field, and he's always producing. And he's definitely my favorite on this list, slightly over Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool is definitely very intriguing due to his age, still being on a rookie contract. But Tyler Boyd kind of has that it factor where it's like, you could throw him into a number 2, number 1 spot, and he would produce because he has that much skill. Chase Claypool's kind of been inconsistent over his career, but definitely has the potential. Both those guys I would be happy with, but Tyler Boyd gets a slight edge for me. So the next 2 wide receivers on this list are kind of a low risk, high reward type of player here. here. First, we have Terrace Marshall from the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are having a fire sale right now. We saw they traded Robbie Anderson yesterday, and I'm not going to include DJ Moore on this list just because I have a separate video about DJ Moore. If you want to go watch that, click the link right above. So I included Terrace Marshall on this list because I believe they could trade him as well. Marshall's been a healthy scratch most of the year after being, a second-round draft pick from last year's draft. They already traded for Laviska Shenault from the Jaguars, who pretty much took his place. He's a promising second-round wide receiver from that 2021 draft. He had 23 total touchdowns his 2 last years at LSU, and I think you could trade for him for likely a 4th or 5th rounder. And like I said, it's kind of a low-risk, high-reward, and I know you might be saying, 4th rounder, that's a high draft pick, but this guy has a ton of talent. He's a premier receiver that can play the outside, can play the inside if you give him the snaps, and if you match him up with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, he could be great. And I know a lot of people might be also thinking, well, Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw to young wide receivers, and I don't think that's true at all. I think if they get open and they show him what they're capable of, he will throw them the ball. I mean, look at Romeo Doubs. Next on this list, I have Marquez Callaway from the New Orleans Saints. After a promising 700-yard and 6-touchdown season in 2021, Callaway is pretty much now an afterthought on that Saints team. He's 6th in targets with only 17 targets so far this year and sub 100 yards receiving. Callaway's not even 25 years old yet and a pure outside wide receiver at 6'3". He's been hidden on the depth chart below Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry, and Mike Thomas, and I think he could easily be traded, and I don't think it would cost much. Green Bay could be a nice landing spot for someone like Callaway, and he would secure an instant spot and get instant snaps on Green Bay as well. I think Callaway and Kendrick Bourne, the first one on my list, would be the cheapest wide receivers to trade for here. I think he would also command a 6th-round pick just like Bourne. All right, so for the last player on this list, personally, I don't want to see the Packers trade for him, but I think he could still be a candidate just because of what's going on with him, and that's Kenny Golladay from the New York Giants. And I know there's some people that really like Kenny Golladay and say, this guy used to be legit. He was a premier wide receiver, one of the top in the NFL, and then there's people that absolutely hate him. So I understand both sides here, but let me start by saying that the only way this works is if New York pays the majority of his contract, which the reports are pretty much saying that they would. Ian Rappaport reported that, the Giants would have to pick up most of his contract if they were to move Kenny Golladay, and that the new team acquiring Kenny Golladay would be on the hook for the remaining 2022 salary, which as of right now would be right around $8.4 million, and then also the $4.5 million bonus for 2023. As I said, Golladay was once a top wide receiver in the NFL when he was on the Lions. Now he is an afterthought. Ever since signing this big contract in New York, he's done absolutely nothing. He's been hurt. He really has done nothing on offense. He's 7th in targets for the Giants right now with only 6 targets and 22 total yards through 6 weeks of this season. Once a 1,000-yard wide receiver in 2018 and 2019. If New York were to eat most of his contract and the compensation was really low, like a conditional late-round pick, I'd say you go for it. And I really don't think he would command a high capital draft pick because the contract, the injuries, the lack of production the last couple of years, I honestly think it would be like a conditional 6th-round draft pick to try to trade for Kenny Golladay. But there's a lot that would have to go down with the New York Giants eating a lot of money, which who knows if they even want to do that right now. They might just wait until next year where they can save a little bit of money by trading him or cutting him. That's likely going to be the case. But if a team really wants him, and the Giants say, okay, let's just at least try to get something back for Kenny Golladay and just eat some of this money, they might end up doing that. But I'm not a huge fan of this trade. There's a lot of other guys on this list that I'd rather have. Probably everyone else on this list I'd rather see the Packers trade for first, but this is still definitely an option. But those are the 6 trade targets I have at wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. If you want to see a similar video on the free agents at wide receiver, let me know down in the comments below and I'll make that. But like I said, I think this is the year the Packers finally should make a splash, go out and trade for a wide receiver. With all the injuries and lack of production, I think it's a must right now. But let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. What do you think? Do you think the Packers should trade for a wide receiver? Do you think it would be someone on this list, or do you have someone else in mind? Just leave that down below. But that about does it for this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, and as always, go Pack Go.